Joining us from the NFL Network, covers the Patriots, Mike Giardi, who will be covering this game all week long. A big one between the Eagles and Patriots. You can follow him at Mike Giardi. Have you ever been confused for Mike in the past, Jeff Mosher?
Apparently I have, because I worked for CSN, so I used to have that logo, as the guys up in New England who work for CSN also had, and I was there for a Patriots-Eagles game, and someone approached me in a restaurant and asked me if I was Mike Giardi.
Mike, have you ever been confused for Jeff Mosher before?
No, and I'm sorry that someone came up to you. Did they want to punch you in the face? Because that's usually the reaction I get.
Well, he said, I watch you every day, and I'm like, are you here for the game from Philadelphia? He said, no. He looked at me like I was crazy, and I said, well, how do you watch me every day?
What an insult to Mike.
Yeah.
Sorry, Mike.
Well, Mike, obviously, first off, do you remember a time, other than the Super Bowl, we all know how that went, when two teams play each other coming off a bye?
No, in fact, Belichick was asked about that in his press conference earlier today, and he was sort of scratching his head, just about, how long it's been, and I don't think he had an answer for us. So, yeah, it is a little bit different. I think it's good for both teams, obviously, in terms of the health, and I think it creates another layer of intrigue because, as we well know, teams coming off the bye, and he starts tinkering a little bit and refining certain things or saying, hey, we're not doing this enough, let's go do it. So I think that the first quarter and a half is going to be really interesting to see what both teams do and how the other one reacts to it.
Now, the whole theory of, oh, man, you don't want to play the Patriots when they're coming off of a bye kind of got debunked a little bit. They lost 2 games in a row twice last year, right?
Yeah. I mean, it's all well and good, when you say talking about preparation, but, I mean, there's a lot of smart coaches in this league, good quarterbacks. It was a nice little run, but I think you're just now at the point where how you play matters the most. It doesn't matter whether you got the rest or not. I mean, I'm sure there is a little bit of a boost from getting the rest, but I think that's sort of we can make numbers do what they want. I think that was one of those cases. I mean, they won pretty much every week. So bye week, not bye week, they're usually pretty good on Sunday.
Well, Mike, I guess a lot of people, we just take for granted. They're the Patriots. It's Belichick and Brady. They are who they are. They're good. Now, they haven't had a very difficult schedule. They played one tough game and kind of got beat up. Who are the 2019 New England Patriots?
Yeah, I don't think we know that. I think we're about to find out. I think the stretch with Baltimore before the bye, Philadelphia, they've got Dallas coming up the following week. They trip to Houston as well. I think we'll have a real good sense of, were some of those numbers incredibly inflated because of the opposition, or is this what this team is? And the Ravens game was just sort of a bump in the road to, another run to at least the AFC title game or maybe beyond.
Is it fair to make an argument? I mean, the Patriots, if you go beyond Tom Brady throughout their 20 years, always been very, very strong up front in the offensive line and defensive line. I think Tom's kind of covered up some of their offensive line issues this year. And the caliber of quarterback they've played and how good their secondary is may have covered up the kind of lack of pure pass rushers that they have. I think in so many years of Patriots football, I can't remember them having, I don't know if lack of talent is the word, but this much issues, I guess, on both lines. Is that fair?
I think definitely looking at the offensive line for me, because I think it has been their greatest area of weakness, and it has been that way since the opening week. They took a heavy blow in the summer when David Andrews is their starting center and one of their captains had blood clots, and he was ruled out for the year. And he's not an all-pro. He's maybe not even a Pro Bowler, but incredibly smart, very athletic. We talk about pass protection a lot, and they've had some issues there, but it also has hurt their run game because he was so athletic. He was able to get to that second level and pick off a linebacker, and maybe, these runs that are 3 yards, maybe they turn into 6 or 7, and that's a huge difference in the league, being second and 8 versus second and 3. And I think there's been a lot of scenarios where that's been an issue for them. Left tackle has been huge. Marshall Newhouse was signed off the street and has started since week 3, but had to step in fairly early there because Isaiah Wynn, who was their first-round pick, one of their first-round picks 2 years ago, had turf toe, and he's just coming back. I think he's eligible for the Dallas game as he comes off of IR. So they haven't really gelled at all, and there have been issues up front. They're not running it well. And you're right, Brady does mitigate some of that because he gets rid of the ball so quickly. But you can tell there's some frustration there that they're not able to sort of reach deep into their bag of tricks and run some of the stuff that they've been running in years past because they just can't trust the protection, and they certainly don't feel like they're a good running football team right now.
And, Mike, you look at the Patriots and their schedule, and that's been the one common criticism for anyone discussing this Patriots team. It's, well, we don't know if they're the same old Patriots. Look at who they've played, and their stats have been, I think, inflated because of their opponents. So can you educate us a little bit on who this team really is? Because they faced the second fewest rushing attempts this entire season because they're winning so much against these garbage teams. How good or bad really is their run defense and, their ability to force other teams to turn the ball over?
Well, if I put the offensive line as their first and most major issue, I would put their run defense at number 2. And look, when you play the Ravens, that's a unique offense with a unique quarterback, and you don't see that every week. So you expect that there were going to be some issues. But they had issues the week prior against Cleveland. Nick Chubb ran all over them, and unfortunately for Chubb, he coughed it up twice, including one after about a 45, 50-yard run down by the 3 or 4 yard line, which was just a killer for Cleveland. But Frank Gore got him a little bit earlier in the season, and that is an area where I think that they're not as good as they've been, and it's something that if I'm Philadelphia, I'm looking at Miles Sanders and Jordan Howard, and I'm thinking that I'm gonna hand it to them until you stop it, and even then I might still keep doing it because we feel like there are plays to be made there. So I think that's an area for the Patriots that, if they spend time here on the bye sort of looking at themselves. I don't know how you get much better, though, because they're not huge up front, and their backup guys, their backup interior guys are more of the pass rushing type. So they don't have a 330-pounder sitting there to fill up the lanes, if they don't like what they're getting from Danny Shelton. And that's been an issue because Adam Butler's been on the field a lot, and while he's been a very good pass rusher, not so stout against the run.
Mike, obviously, this team always makes they seem to do things. Were you surprised, one, that they gave up on Gordon? I guess they replaced him with Sanu, but how did that whole situation kind of affect the team, if at all? Like, is that something that was surprising? Because you look at that team offensively, and it's like, all right, what is their identity? Gordon wasn't really, he certainly wasn't the Gordon that he was in 2013 with the Browns, but was that a surprise, or was it just, look, we tried and tried and tried, and they couldn't get him to connect?
It was a little bit of a surprise, and it's sort of still a bit of a mystery because they sort of played that one as close to the vest as possible in terms of, the information that's been leaked out. The one thing that I gathered in talking to some people is they just didn't feel like he ran well anymore. And he came back this year bigger, like 245 pounds as opposed to 235. And look, he's a physical freak. We're not talking about fat. He came back, jacked. But they felt like maybe that had an impact, and he didn't lose as much weight as they thought he would once he started training on the regular for football and being in this environment. But really, that's the only thing that I gathered from them is they just didn't feel like he was running as well as he could, and they decided to move on. Now, part of it is you get Sanu in here. The other part is they spent a first-round pick the first time in Belichick's 20 years on a wide receiver, N'Keal Harry, and he's been on IR. He was activated prior to the Ravens game, but then didn't dress for the game. The expectation this week would be, obviously, you would assume that he's going to be out there, although Belichick won't necessarily commit to it, but that's just another layer of intrigue. You got to find snaps for this kid at some point, or otherwise, you wasted a first-round pick on a rookie who's not making an impact this year.
We're kind of going through that with our second-round pick here.
Who? They don't even know his name.
Guys, Patriots' first, second, and third-round picks are Harry was on IR and just got activated, hasn't played. Their second-round pick, Juwan Williams, the cornerback out of Vanderbilt, I think he's been active for 2 games, basically getting a redshirt year. And their third-round pick, running back Damian Harris, has pretty much been inactive for the entire season. So it is it's like next year's class might get a big boost because of these 3 guys not getting any playing time this year, but you would expect at some point they'll see the field.
So, Mike, if I have this right, yeah, the Eagles thought they were being smart by planting Michael Bennett on the Patriots, and then that experiment blew up in New England. So the Patriots thought they were being smart by getting revenge by planting Bennett on the Eagles' rivals, in the only place where Bennett's behavior could probably be fine because nobody really cares if you're kind of crazy in Dallas. So that was really interesting kind of journey for Bennett and that whole deal. What went on over there?
Yeah, I think when they made the trade with Philadelphia, you were looking at it as a player for player. Trey Flowers was going to go in free agency.
Uh-huh.
There was no way they were going to come close to matching that. So he gets massive. I think it was $52 million guaranteed over the first 3 years of that deal from Detroit. So you think like, hey, pound for pound, player for player. Yeah, Bennett's older, but he's still really productive. We put him in this system. We gave him a little bit of a raise to make him happier, and that this will work. Well, I think what happened was the Patriots linebacking crew is a lot better than they thought it was. And part of that is Jamie Collins, who they got basically on cheap for 1 year deal this offseason, has been terrific. And some people's, midseason all-pro teams and that sort of thing. And they became more of a 3-4 team than I think they anticipated. In fact, they've been a 3-4 team as opposed to a 4-3 team. And Bennett, two-gapping and all that stuff just wasn't really buying in. And you saw the decrease in snaps. And, we theorized here for a little bit. Well, maybe they're just saving him for that big stretch run, like wear and tear on his body. He's played a lot of football and no, not the case at all, right? Just didn't fit with the change in system and didn't fit with his willingness. He got suspended for that week for getting into a quote unquote philosophical disagreement with Brett Bielema, who was his position coach. And I think when that happened, you kind of knew that his time was short, and indeed it was. I think he was traded like 2 days after the suspension was done. So failed experiment for Michael Bennett, and you're right. We'll probably see him in the postseason making plays because he's still a good football player. He's definitely still a good football player, but he's definitely a different dude for sure.
Mike, as we get closer to game day here in Philadelphia on Sunday, what's the narrative and talk around the Patriots as far as how to attack this Eagles team? And what's the narrative on this Eagles team from the Patriots side of the fence?
I think they look at the Eagles secondary and feel like they're a place to be made there. But again, because of the scheme that Philly runs and Jim Schwartz, they've really amped up the pressure. I'm sure, as you guys have watched over the last few games, that's something that the Patriots are expecting to see. And will they be able to deal with it? Because Baltimore brought a fair amount of blitzing, especially early in the game, and it really unnerved Brady in the offense and took him totally out of it for the first quarter and a half. And as you know, then it was 17-0, and you're playing catch up against a good football team, and they're building on a Sunday night. That's not exactly where you want to be, and I'm sure it's going to be wild in Philadelphia too, and that's something that they're going to want to avoid. But I think that's where they look at it and say their secondary hasn't been great this year. There's yards to be gained if we can only protect Tom, and that's again, he's done a good job of protecting himself this year, and at times he's had to because the line has broken down so quickly.
All right, this weekend it's Eagles-Patriots, 4:25. Listen to the pregame right here with Tony Bruno. Starts at 1. Merrill and Mike have the call. 4:25 kickoff. Eagles-Patriots, first time since the Super Bowl, which Tom Brady said this week, he's not over that game yet. So we'll see if he's out for revenge in a big way on Sunday. Mike, we appreciate the time.
Hey, guys, thanks for having me.
And Mike Giardi, like all guests, appeared via the Boardwalk Honda hotline.